to infinity and beyond.
What's up, everyone? It's Roger here from DisKingdom.com with James once again for this episode of the Infinity and Beyond podcast, your weekly Disney video games. And on this week's show, we are going to be going a little bit retro. We're going to do a little bit of a retrospective look at Disney video games from the past, because James is lucky enough to be down in Walt Disney World, riding around, is screaming around on Everest and jumping down on the Tower of Terror, or are you just carrying away on It's a Small World?
Well, I think at this exact moment, I'm probably asleep in my hotel, but
we're going to do all those things. You'll be raving down in a party down in Disney Springs at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes. Yeah, you can tell. Yeah. I am such a raver. I'm...
Whoop, whoop.
Oh, right, yeah. No, more likely I'm asleep. I am asleep right now.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, we'll be doing all 4 of the parks, so that'll be fun.
Yes, I'm very, very jealous. So, this week's show, we're going to be talking about Disney video games of the past, our favourite ones, ones that we maybe wanted to try that didn't, and just in general, just having a chat about games of the past from Disney. So, James, because I know we've got a list of all the games what is kind of one of your first experiences of a Disney video game?
My first experience with a video game, or a Disney video game that I can remember, is DuckTales, the original DuckTales back on the NES, and that would probably be the major one. That would be the one that I think of. I also remember Castle of Illusion on the Sega Genesis. I didn't have it because I didn't have a Sega, but I remember going over to my friend's place and watching him play it. And then there was, I don't remember the name of it, but there was a Mickey game on, I think it was the NES. I'm going to have to look at this list and see if I can find it on there, but I remember playing it for quite some time, and my sister used to love it, which was weird because she's not a video game person, but she really loved this game until it broke. Just the cartridge physically broke. It wasn't a problem with the game. But I'll see if I can look that up. And what were you playing back then?
Well, I must have been NES. One of the very, very first games, the very first console game I ever brought was Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I was a massive Chip 'n Dale Rescue Ranger fan. I would go nuts. When we went to Disney World, I saw Chip 'n Dale, and I think Mum and Dad were basically like, I think they thought I had a fit because they were real. Chip 'n Dale, I remember spending my Christmas money on. I think it was £55. And if this is for the NES, right? You can go buy it out for £55. That would be every AAA game now. So I always find it funny when people talk about prices of video games. My very first video game 30 years ago was nearly like that price. It's just like, they were expensive.
How long did it take for you to save up for that?
That was Christmas.
Christmas present, right?
This is the thing. Back in that era, you only got games twice a year. But I used to spend all my pocket money on renting games, especially in the Mega Drive SNES era. There's a lot of Disney games that came out in the Super Nintendo Mega Drive era that I didn't own, but I rented and played. Because there's a whole host of different games, and I played most of them. I rented probably every game that came out. So things like The Jungle Book, and you also had The Lion King, and you had all those classic Aladdin, all these classic 2D side scrollers. I played them all. But I also played all the other ones like Cool Spot. I played, Sonic, Super Mario, all of the. Those I tended to own, but generally, all those different side-scrolling ones, I used to play. So I was a big. So I look back on them as kind of classic Disney games. It's that side-scrolling side from the NES to the SNES, that kind of. And I remember playing World of Illusion. I remember playing Castle of Illusion. DuckTales, for me, actually was a Game Boy game because when we were on a trip to Spain, my dad brought me a Game Boy game cartridge that had a little button on it, and it had about 100 games on it. And there was you had to press the button to flick between it. So there was a Mickey Mouse game, which was a little, and I think it's like a Japanese-only game. And I think it had DuckTales on it as well. But I think half the games I had to learn how to play in a different language. And you're a kid. They all had different names, like Bionic Commando was called something different, and I think I even played Pokemon in Japanese. It was like that thing of But obviously, to like a 12, 13-year-old, well, yeah, my dad bought me a dodgy copy of a Game Boy game, but I've got all these games. Perfect. You don't question it.
Don't care. It's games. It's something to keep you entertained.
Yeah.
I found the game it was Mickey Mousecapade for the
yeah.
NES. Came out in 1988. Man, my sister loved that game. Maybe I should get it for her.
Yeah, I'm constantly picking. See, this. I do have a thing about. I'm always on eBay looking at classic games and stuff. And so there's a load of games I didn't even play at the time. But there was just so many games. Donald Duck. There was a Quack Shop. They were churning them out left, right, and center. But to me, I look back on that era of Disney games as kind of like one of like the golden ages for me, was because I was a kid. There was lots of Disney games, and I don't think they probably haven't aged as badly as the ones that came in later on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2. I think those classic side-scrolling games are a lot more future-proof than the 3D platforming and stuff.
You're probably right about that, especially since platformers haven't really changed that much. Other than the graphics, and there's only so much you can do with like the control schemes. You got up, down, left, right, jump, weapons, maybe a special attack, maybe a roll or something like that. You only need a handful of buttons for most side scrollers. So really, you put a new coat of paint on it, and it's the same game it used to be with absolutely no changes. Now, granted, these ones from the NES era, the Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis are completely impossibly hard.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's really very little difference between them and the modern ones.
I mean, earlier this year, both the remastered versions of DuckTales and Cats of Illusion came on Xbox One for backwards compatibility, and I picked them both up and played through and completed them both. And do you know what? I absolutely loved playing those games this year. If you to play a game and complete it within a week. Side-scrolling, it looked beautiful. Those remastered ones were probably some of my favourite games of this year, because I had so much fun playing them. They look amazing. The controls work amazingly well. So if you're into those games, those remastered ones, we also saw the re-release of The Jungle Book, Aladdin, and Lion King on PC, which I played as well. So it's been actually, for this year's been quite good for that, for actually for me, has been playing quite a bit of those side-scrolling ones. But yeah, those were kind of, that era for me is kind of like the golden age of Disney, is that kind of era.
It definitely makes sense, especially since a lot of those games, they're based on the movies that came out at that time. And, if you've got your kids now, a lot of people who grew up with those games have kids now, you can plop them in front of The Lion King, the movie, and then put them in front of the side scroller, and they'll have pretty much the same reaction that we do now. They might complain about like the lack of checkpoints because they're used to them, but other than that, it's the same basic experience.
Another game I just looking there, Mickey Mania. I remember having that on the Mega CD. That was because my Mega CD. There wasn't too many games out on that, but that was a game that I remember having. I remember even getting a demo disc and loving. Back when we used to get them. There were so many different games, but there's so many games that I didn't necessarily play. Like I said, you had like Disney's Magical Quest 1, 2, and 3. I never played any of them. Again, it's all at that era. If your local store doesn't buy them in, that's the end of that game. No doesn't exist at that age. You weren't aware of it.
We didn't have eBay. We didn't have Amazon. Like you said, if it wasn't out in your area, you weren't getting it. Period. Yeah. It wasn't happening.
I spoke about this before. X-Men, the arcade game, was a major game that I played as a kid as well, and so that was cool. Star Wars was always a little bit more interesting. We've talked about Marvel and Star Wars in the past, but the Disney games, I feel like at that era, were a league above everything else. That they were really able to kind of master that. They did it right, and it worked. Aladdin is a classic game of just being very, very good and work. And it looked, as well as even now, you load that one up, and if they did a remastered of it, it looked like the movie. It looked like the cartoon, and I think that's what worked on it.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing was Disney had a formula. Well, they still have a formula, but they had a formula with those movies in the late 80s, early 90s. They stuck to the formula, and that formula also worked really, really well on side-scrolling platformers. Honestly, if platformers of this variety hadn't kind of been shuffled off the deck with the arrival of the PlayStation and the N64, they'd probably still be making them for all the new games. We'd have a Moana one right now.
Yeah.
But
it's funny because it's like earlier this year we saw the release of Finding Dory Just Keep Swimming on the app. And it was that kind of thing of this feels like a classic game. You know, and I think this was the big thing when the Finding Dory playset got released earlier this year, of it being a side-scrolling game. And I remember saying like to Abe and stuff, going, "I love this game. This is great. One of my favorite things." And I liked all the 2D parts of the Inside Out game, because for me that was what a Disney game in my brain instantly just reverts back to. If you say classic Disney game, I go back to that side-scrolling thing. So I really enjoyed that. Even this year with Finding Dory, of that having that aspect of 2D, because it works and it works so well.
And I don't think that was an accident. I think that the Infinity team knew that they grew up with the same stuff. Because I remember switching over to Star Wars, they were talking about, like, we designed the AT-AT walkers in Infinity to remind you of the old Kenner sets from the 70s. And it's like they were clearly basing the gameplay for the various different levels on what we did as kids. Like, you'd sit on the floor and you'd have all the Star Wars action figures around the whatever figure you were playing at the time, and that's really what Infinity felt like. And moving over to the Disney side, you know, both Finding Dory and Inside Out, as you mentioned, definitely are drawing from inspiration from those older games. Finding Dory in particular.
See, then when we moved like onto, for example, like the PlayStation era, things started getting a little bit different for me, was because of my age at the time. Because I was a teenager, I was now, you know, the PlayStation and the N64 era, I was at college, and therefore games changed a little bit. You know, it's like, I mean, I've got like Aladdin and Toy Story. I've downloaded a few PlayStation 3 ones because they were on sale, and picked up a few. I still haven't got around to playing them yet, but I didn't play them the first time around. I was in a different era. You know, when the PlayStation 1 came out, you know, you've got like Tekken and Wipeout and Destruction Derby, and you know, I've said about, you know, playing Spider-Man games and playing, you know, Marvel superheroes, and so for me, the entire of that era of the PlayStation 1, I was in a different zone for video games, and Disney didn't really appeal because at that time, you know, we were having the Mulan, we were having Pocahontas. I was not the target audience. I was not who they were going for, and so therefore that whole era, I was. I know this. There's a big gap in my Disney video game history because I was not interested in that kind of gaming at that age.
Similarly, once I think we got past The Lion King, I wasn't following the Disney video games all that much. I wasn't even following the movies all that much. I think it was Hercules that came out a couple years after that, and I was very disappointed with that movie because I was super excited. I love Greek mythology, and I did not enjoy the movie that much. I've come to appreciate it a little bit more as I've gotten older, but I still think it's not one of their better movies. Point being, in that time frame, you know, when we started getting the N64 and whatnot, most of my brand loyalty was actually to the Nintendo characters. I was playing a lot of Mario Kart. I was playing a lot of Mario 64, Smash Brothers, the original one, stuff like that, Star Fox. And I really didn't have time for games that weren't those ones. Yeah. Especially because I was a lot more social back then, relatively speaking, and I actually had friends that would come over, you know, as you would in high school. You know, your friends would come over after school, and you'd hop around the N64 or the PlayStation and play some Smash Brothers or some Mario Kart, and, you know, trash talking each other and all that stuff. And we weren't going to come home and play The Lion King. We weren't going to play Tarzan or whatever. We were going to play, you know, Mario stuff.
I think that depends on your age. Of, you know, there will be people watching that maybe were a bit younger than us that will be looking on the PlayStation 1 era of like Hercules, Aladdin 2, and Toy Story, and that would be like, those are their childhood games. So it all depends on your definition of where you are, of what you're coming up with. I think for us, that era we were, like I say, early 20s. There's not, Pixar movies were amazing, and I did go to the cinema to see them. But going out and buying the game was too much of a stretch because, like I said, rather be playing Grand Theft Auto or Splinter Cell or Ghost Recon or something else along those lines that was aimed at that age group of, and I think, but then I just feel in general as a whole, the thing with Disney, you have adults now like us and younger, that go back into it because you get to that point like, actually, I really don't care about what people think, and in general, retro, just people are a little bit more understand. I don't think back then there was it was quite geekiness wasn't quite accepted as much as it was 10 years ago.
No, it wasn't accepted at all, really.
Yeah.
We were the kids who had our lunch money stolen and all that fun stuff. It's not the way it is now. I'm sure, there's still bullying and all that stuff, and it's terrible, but they pick different targets for bullying now, which doesn't make it better, but that's beside the point.
No, I mean, it is quite funny to sort of think about now of how, things like Disney movies and stuff, they are major events, and there was that era of Disney movies in the noughties at the beginning of the thing. Pixar was dominating and Disney did drop off the thing, and their video games kind of show that. Actually, when you look at his history, there's lots of very sort of cheap tie-ins, very quick. They were just churning them out. There wasn't a huge amount of interest in it, and I think that whole kind of PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era was very much just cheap movie tie-ins. That was basically all there was from this list.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much that actually has to do with Pixar either, because you look at the Disney from the early 2000s up to about 2009 or 10 or so. All they were producing was like 101 Dalmatians 2, Little Mermaid 3, Beauty and the Beast 10. It's like, come on, give us some decent actual movies. Home on the Range, no. The movie we want to forget about. And it wasn't until they kind of went back to go into the traditional style, was it Tangled and Princess and the Frog and stuff like that, where they really kind of recovered as a company in many, many ways.
Like, I was just going to say, 2010 seems to be about the year that their games changed, because you started getting things like Epic Mickey and Disney Universe. They took a step back from those just rehashing movies. They started looking at Tron Evolution. They started breaking away from doing the cheap tie-ins because it wasn't working on the third generation of PlayStation and Xbox 360.
No, and they are all the better for it, because those are actually some pretty good games right there. And then Disney Infinity, of course, became the platform for everything, tie-ins and new material and everything, which obviously we've talked about at length already. But with the exception of Kingdom Hearts, they really didn't have anything going on in that time frame.
I mean, Lego, it's kind of that thing as well. Like, you look back now and you kind of think like Lego Indiana Jones, but that technically wasn't Disney at the time. We had Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, which was a good game, but they never really, whereas Star Wars and Marvel tend to have they've had quite a good strong history with Lego. We haven't yet seen the Lego Disney game yet, really. We've only seen Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm not going to be at all surprised if we saw just a Disney Disney Lego game at some point in the future. But even from the Lego point of view, they didn't really jump in on that till much later. They weren't. Whereas like Lego and like Star Wars were involved in that quite a lot earlier. But no, and I do feel like 2010, sort of getting some different games. Obviously, then we got Disney Infinity, and now they, we still get those little movie tie-ins, but there was a big shift over, things like Epic Mickey, Castle of Illusion, remastered. They went back and started afresh, and then they rebooted with Disney Infinity, and now they're going to have to reboot. We're going to have a new era of video games kicking off. Probably 2017, 18 is going to be a new era for Disney games. And
eventually, Kingdom Hearts 3 will lead the charge someday by 2025.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's like mentioning Kingdom Hearts, because there was this big thing. There's this massive, great big section of about 15 years of Kingdom Hearts history, and I missed it. I don't know how. I don't know what happened. I don't know how Kingdom Hearts, how I missed it when it came out the first time or when number 2 came out. And then when I looked up against it, it went up against Splinter Cell, which I was a big fan of that series. And I don't know if Grand Theft Auto was out, but I don't know what it was. But Kingdom Hearts, I didn't grow up on it. I know there's a lot of kids that have grown up and people that have grown up on Kingdom Hearts. And that's a major part of their childhood gaming. And it was, I'm playing Kingdom Hearts 1 on the 1.5 remake. It's coming to PlayStation 4 in 2017. That's how good they is, because they're even remastering it. It is a strong Disney game. But I missed it. I completely somehow missed that series up until, to be fair, I don't think it really was until I saw it through Disney Infinity when everyone was going out with it. I'm like, well, I don't really remember. I had no real history of this game at all.
See, I was slightly different. I was aware of it. However, my source for information on it was kind of a poisoned well. The first person who introduced me to Kingdom Hearts was a person I didn't really like, and we had very different tastes. So I'm like, if he likes it, then I'm not sure that I'm going to like this. So that started that. And then my second introduction to it was through the fandom of it. And as a person on the outside looking into that fandom, I was like, I want nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
I should specify that when I say fandom in this case, I'm not talking about casual fans. I'm talking about the people who were like, these two characters are clearly in love and they need to be in love, and that's the true story. And but they're 12-year-old boys. Why are you doing this?
Yes.
This is wrong on so many levels.
But I think for me, like Kingdom Hearts, now you see I'm starting off with Kingdom Hearts, and all these remixes and remasters are good for me to get me into the game. And I still can't believe how big these games are. They are epically massive, and it's also a little bit overwhelming when you're starting off and you realize everyone's talking about stuff that's happened, and you're seeing all these things on different videos and stuff. And for me, it's like starting back at number 1 and realizing I have got 6 games, each of 30 hours apiece. It is like now trying to catch up on 10 years of a TV series that's got when you look on Netflix and you find 9 seasons and you go, well, this is going to take some dedication to catch up, and then you're like, do I do it or not? And for me, the Kingdom Hearts series is one thing that I completely missed, but I want to catch up on. I have now, I'm now sitting here 30 hours or 20 hours into Kingdom Hearts 1. I've played 10 hours of one of the DS games. I am looking forward to playing 2.8, and I will play through both games, and then 1.5 playing through 2 properly. So for me, I'm quite excited about having this. Not only have I got this huge franchise, but I'm discovering it for the very first time, and we've got the remastered. But again, it was a series that completely missed me over, but I've been drawn in, and I feel like this is what these remixes and stuff are for, is to try and get us ready for free, to get a new generation, to get new people into it. And I think that's exactly what they need to do. But it is so complicated.
And that's the other thing, is I knew how complicated it was based on interactions with people. And I was like, do I really want to invest the time in this? And now, 10 years later, I'm willing to invest the time into Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5 and eventually 3. Now, granted, I'm probably going to stick to just Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. I'm not going to bother with Chain of Memories and 358/2 days and all that stuff. But I might go and view some YouTube summaries or something like that just to see what happened in them. But this is one of those things where we're seeing this increasingly with games of this kind, where it's got a 60-hour experience, but you're coming back to it like a couple of years later, and you're like, do I really want to spend that much time on this? Can I just kind of rush through it and get the core story?
Yeah, I'm like, it's like me. I got the remix versions. I want to play. I'm going to do 1. I want to try and get 1 done before 2.8 comes out, and I'm going to play that. The trouble is, then I know what's going to happen is, then I'm going to be used to the new modern system of running it, because I played 0.2 earlier this year, and it felt amazing. And then playing 1 feels a bit like a back step. And I'll play 2. As far as the other 2 remix versions, I might play them later on down the year, but they're not priorities. Chain of Memories and Birth by Sleep, I probably will give it a go, because I think that's an entirely different game, a different story. you play as Aqua and as a different character, so it's a bit different. But there again, like I said, I missed the series, and I don't know whether or not if I did see it, then it was like number 2, and I didn't understand it. But I think also not being a Final Fantasy person, I wasn't. Final Fantasy 15. That's the first game I'd ever played recently. Was that I missed this whole series. Japanese role-playing games were never on my radar. I didn't even really like Zelda. I didn't like anything like that. They weren't my kind of games, and I think that's where I kind of maybe dropped off. Anything like Japanese style, I just don't think I was really into, and therefore that's why I've got no connection with those. Final Fantasy is 15, and I've got no knowledge of it at all.
And I guess that was another thing for me too. For me, I am a longtime Final Fantasy player. I've been playing it since the NES era, and I grew up with the NES era. And 7, I'm going to get blasted for this. 7 was okay. I don't think it was the great game that a lot of people do, but I think also that's because I played previous ones, and those were my baseline that I measured by. I hated 8. Absolutely. To this day, I can't play 8. But those are the 2 games that the Kingdom Hearts take their Final Fantasy characters from, are 7 and 8. And I'm willing to play with Cloud and Tifa and all that. I think they're great characters. But, man, when I see Squall or Lionheart, as he's called, I think, in these games, just like, I just want to take that sword and do absolutely terrible things to you with it, and not in a good way.
No.
But... yeah, yes. I'm going to get blasted for that because I know 7 is like the holy grail of Final Fantasy games.
It's funny because, like I said, I didn't have any connection. But I remember my friend taking me. We went to the cinema to see the movie Spirits Within or something like that. This like the CG one, and I was lost. Didn't have a clue what was going on.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if you played any Final Fantasy games or not. That movie made no sense at all.
It's just I think there again, like that whole era of the Kingdom Hearts thing. I know a lot of that. I at least sit here now and I feel like it's like one of those things like, like when people talk sometimes about a movie or a TV series and you maybe haven't seen it and people kind of go, what? You haven't seen it? Or for me, the Kingdom Hearts game with Disney games now has become the bit like, oh, how did I miss this? How did I not know about this kind of game? And want to catch up on it, and I am interested in it. And I, playing it, and suddenly Pinocchio pops up, and I'm like, hey, like that's how I'm playing it, and it's just this odd thing for me. Like there was this whole history of this video game, and I totally didn't get it. But there again, if it was in your if it was not in the PlayStation or the Xbox magazine, and you didn't know if it wasn't in your, the internet was still. Was around, but if the sites you were on didn't cover it, you wouldn't have known about it the same way like you do now.
Yeah, and then there's also, kind of that, I don't know the appropriate term for it, but when people start hyping the heck out of these games every once in a while, or movies or TV shows, they're like, you have to go see Firefly. It's the greatest TV show. At a certain point, you're just like, no, I don't want to watch it anymore because you've hyped it up too much and I don't care anymore.
I did watch one episode on Netflix and was a bit like, what's everyone getting so hyped up about this? And didn't bother. Because a Star Trek and Star Wars fan, I was a bit like, this. Again, one episode in, everyone had been talking and hyping it up. I watched one episode and thought, didn't quite get it, so I didn't carry on with it.
Now, to specify, since I'm already going to get destroyed on the Final Fantasy VII point, I am actually a huge fan of Firefly. But the way it gets hyped up to people as like the greatest thing ever to come out on TV, I can see why people find that off-putting. Especially then when they actually go and watch and like, wait, how is this awesome? You kind of have to watch the entire thing, and by the end of it, you're like, yes, this is pretty awesome. But at the same time, you guys need to lay off.
Yeah, it's a bit. I'm gonna be honest. We also had it this year with Breaking Bad. Everyone kept telling us how great this was. We watched 3 episodes and thought it was dull and boring, and then my sisters, they're going, oh yeah, by the 4th season it gets really good. It's like, I'm not investing like 60 hours of television for it to become good. It's not good in the first hour. It's not good.
Not to derail it too much, but Breaking Bad is one of those ones where if I could go back and do it again, I would have just completely skipped seasons 2 and 3 because they bored me to tears. But by the same token, if you don't see all of it building up, then season 5, which is fantastic, you don't get that same impact because you haven't seen all the other stuff. Was it worth it in the end to sit through these other seasons that I didn't care about just to get to season 5? Questionable, but I don't really regret it either.
No.
It was, but I agree in principle on that point. It's like, if I had been watching it as it came out, I would have given up on it after like 2 or 3 episodes because it didn't get good until the end.
But then I think like nowadays we are in this history now of like we've got this like binge culture with TV and games and stuff, and we are seeing like these remastered games of 1, 2, and 3 is that and going it's like but to sit down and play those remasters from top to bottom in order, you are looking at major time. And I do wonder how many people are just jumping in, play it for a couple of hours, go, oh yeah, this is great, this reminds me of how great it was. Oh, and something new's out, I'm going to go over there again. And I do wonder if that's like what, I know like Kingdom Hearts 0.2, everyone's going to want to play because that is brand new. And I think that's going to be the difference with it.
Yeah, and then you also look at some of the other things in the games where a lot of these games will have optional side objectives and whatnot. You're like, but I don't want to do the side objectives. I want to just get the game done so I'm ready for the next game. And you're kind of like, and you think about it and you realize you're missing probably more than half the game.
Yeah. I've been doing that a little bit with Watch Dogs 2 this last couple of weeks where I'm kind of plowing through the main story and it's like, go and do this and go and do that as these extra side quests. And they go, you know what? I actually don't have time to go and paint a wall. I just want to play the story because I've got other games to play. Like you say, you're missing out on stuff that they specifically built in there, but you do start going, can I just have the main story? I don't need to go and find... And it's the same thing with... it's like Kingdom Hearts. I must admit, when I'm playing through Kingdom Hearts now, I have the walkthrough guide up on my laptop because I'm just wandering around, and it's like if I try playing without the guide, 2 hours of gameplay, and I have got nowhere because I don't know where to go next. My brain isn't going, oh, I've got this little item, I need to go back 3 worlds back and give it to this person. I'm there going, right, where's the sign telling me where to go next? I'm used to that kind of structure of a game, and maybe that's why I've never really got on with that whole style of Zelda of trying to work things out in my brain. And it's like Day of the Tentacle, am I playing that? It's like, what do I do? Oh, you've got to go and do... I don't think like that. I am Super Mario, you just keep running forward.
Yeah. No, Day of the Tentacle, Full Throttle, those games are not games for people like us. Where we're just like, I don't want to be told every little thing I need to do, but yes, please, a little bread trail. Get me on the right path. Show me where I'm supposed to go. That's great. Your Day of the Tentacle, it's like, all right, you picked up this stick about 30 screens ago, and it's the one item you need to unlock this thing over here, but there's nothing that says that. It's just like, okay, I'm going to click on this item and add it there. Click this item and add it there. Nope, not that one. Next item. Next. Oh, God.
It's like a thing you've got to send it back in time 30 years for them to plant it, to then to grow up, to go forward 9 to 30 years to when you can then knock the trick. And you're like, what? Who came up with this idea? It's like, my brain doesn't think like that. It's like, there's a yellow block, I need to hit it. That's kind of, again, it's a different kind of play structure, but for me, like playing Kingdom Hearts, I do need the guide to go through because, it's like I've just beaten a boss and I've got a page to go all the way back to find Merlin, to go find the Winnie the Pooh, to go get that, then to go back and then try and get the words, because I've just unlocked the Atlantic zone last night. That's that kind of thing of like, my brain doesn't feel like it's very much like I need, you need that arrow, you need that, right, this is your, especially now I think with video games where they tend to do mission tracking and here's your list of objectives, show me here, fast travel, that, I think, especially I know like we've been playing Watch Dogs too, fast travel, like I just bring up the map, I don't even drive across the city anymore like I did with Grand Theft Auto, now I just want to get there, I just want to...
Yeah. Priorities.
Yeah. It is, and it's just different kind of games. But like looking back at some of these other Disney games, there were so many great games that came out, and there's also been some, some good games recently. I like looking here. Tron Run, for example, was a game I really enjoyed this year. Tron Evolution and things like that. If you're into Tron, there was loads of Tron games over the years, but there was just so many weird games in here. Just Dance and Dance Revolution and all those games never was interested in.
Yeah, it's I mean, but the thing is, they're obviously trying to hit as many markets as possible.
Yeah.
And inevitably, there's going to be stuff that doesn't interest us. I mean, what was it, a month or two ago, you were going through and doing that Disney match game or whatever where you had the necklace and you had to clean the necklace or whatever it was you were doing. It's like, well, obviously, we're not the target audience for this. We're not young girls. So.
No.
But that's fine. We don't have to be the target audience for everything that it's important for them to do all across the way. But yeah, I think it's interesting. There haven't actually been that many like games from Disney recently, and obviously that's partly Disney Infinity's fault. But you know, the last ones that I'm looking on here that I played that weren't Disney Infinity were like Disneyland Connect Adventures, which would have been a fantastic game if it wasn't for the Connect.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I have got the Connect, but I hate gimmicks, and I think that's why I'm very, very skeptical of PlayStation VR, because I've gone through the Guitar Hero, I've gone through the Wii, we've gone through the drum kits, we've gone through the dance mats. You know, all these little accessories have all died because it doesn't work in the long run, and that's my one issue with them. But like you say, like looking at this list, there's a definite there was a shift. I do think like games like, I do remember like Epic Mickey, that being a game I really enjoyed playing that game through. Epic Mickey 2. Things like this those are my kind of games. But there's just been so much of it, and I do think Disney have never been, I don't think they've been as good at targeting what they're supposed to be doing. They kind of churning stuff out. I mean, like now it's like with the mobile games, personally I do feel like it's like they need a little bit more control over releasing lots of little ones is fine, but now all our licensed games are now just on mobile.
Yeah, and I think that'll probably be the case for the next year or so as they try to get caught up for obvious reasons. As long as they don't oversaturate the mobile market, I think they'll be okay, as long as there's not too much overlap. Because right now, you take a look at the Disney lineup, the Star Wars and Marvel superheroes, they have a lot of games, but the games are all fairly unique. Yeah. I mean, you've got Disney Magic Kingdoms, which is very similar to Marvel Avengers Academy, but they're different properties. Yeah. And then you got like Contest of Champions, which is its own thing, and then Galaxy of Heroes and all that. They're all distinct. They all have their own flavor, and as long as they manage to keep that, they can release as many games as they want. But it's when they start cannibalizing their own sales that's going to be a problem. Yeah,
I think like for me, like things like Belle's Enchanted Tales, also, and the recent Disney Enchanted Tales felt very similar, but a little bit different to Disney Magic Kingdom. Was a bit too close. Obviously, like Moana Rhythm Run was very, very similar to Jungle Book Run. That kind of style is just being churned out. Disney Emoji Blitz is just another free to play, swipe free together game. There was nothing, and I don't know. I think going forward, it's going to be interesting where they go with it. But for me, it's always been the big AAA titles of where they've stood out. But I do not believe Disney have got the confidence in themselves now to make games like that. As I don't know, I guess get the feeling Disney have never really fully understood video games, that they need to invest in them the same way they do with a movie. It's always just, I think it's always just, it's like churning out a t-shirt or a pin. We just make a game because we just make merchandise, and that maybe have never sometimes fully grasped that it needs a little bit more care and attention to it sometimes.
I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, and it makes sense when I think about it. And maybe that's why they're not making video games anymore. Maybe that's why they're contracting everything out. But with the exception of Kingdom Hearts 3, I don't think we've actually heard of them developing any other Disney properties just yet. No. We mentioned Lego earlier, and I think they have renewed their kind of interest in having Disney Lego sets. It wouldn't surprise me if we did get a Lego Disney game, but maybe with the Princess line, because that's where most of the Disney properties end up going. They've got, Moana and Frozen and like that in Lego sets.
Yeah.
I could see them coming out with a game. Plus, they are trying to reach out to that young girl audience, and that would be one way of doing it.
It's actually, I just literally just thought there of a game that's been out there that has been fun for a few years that wasn't listed. Little Big Planet was a game that, while not, some people maybe don't go, well, it's not a Disney game. There's a lot of licensed content in there. There's a lot of playable characters, costumes, level kits. I mean, I picked up the Pirates of the Caribbean level kit in the sale a couple of weeks ago. There's a lot of content in there, and that's this kind of thing of just dropping in. There was Sonic Racing game where they just dropped Wreck-It Ralph in. There's been lots of issues sometimes when they've done that, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this going forward of, right, Capcom make a great fighting game, you go make a Disney fighting game. Telltale, you make a good Storytale game, go do that. I think now they're starting to look at it, right, we need to go find the people to work with to make the right kind of game. We can't do it. Let's just pass it out to the people that can. And, Disney have always got this weird thing of, they give their love to the character. They love the characters. They want to make them everything appropriate. But video games have sometimes fallen off the track. And Square Enix, obviously doing Kingdom Hearts, they take that pride in it. They want to do it properly.
I'm trying to picture a Disney fighting game now. I'm picturing like Rapunzel versus Elsa in a Mortal Kombat style fight. She's beating up Elsa with a frying pan, and Elsa's trying to freeze her. It's kind of crazy. Yeah,
it would be awesome. It would be epic, but I don't think Disney chiefs would ever go for it. I mean, you look at how Disney Infinity sort of tried to do like fighting of like, Rapunzel whacking him over the head. I mean, Super Smash Brothers with Disney characters would be amazing, but I don't know if they ever going to... you look at the history. I mean, there isn't a single fighting game in the whole history of Disney video games going back to, what was the word? We got 1983. There is not literally a single fighting game, I think, in that entire lineup.
It's so off message for what Disney is trying to brand themselves as. We will never see a fighting game. There's not even like a side-scrolling brawler in this list, I don't think. It's not what Disney is. I mean, we might laugh about it. It'd be fun to see it. It'd be great to see a game with all the princesses just beating the crap out of each other, just in theory. But we're not going to see it. It'd be funny, though.
But I think that was the thing when we had Disney Infinity and you did have Rapunzel taking out the Hulk. That was the fun side thing from us.
Oh, yeah, that's what I love. Was it iStarly? Check out his YouTube page where he does the fights, the battle royales with him and his friend, and there's some pretty good ones in there. But I don't think the Disney princesses ever win the fights. So.
No, I suppose the only one that might be able to do it now would be maybe Alice or Mulan, because they had 3.0 character strengths. But the 1.0 characters have no chance against anybody. But I think just in general, there has been a big history of Disney games. They have done a lot over the years. And I have got no doubt about it that in 20, 30 years' time, we will look back on the list of games and there will be 3 times as many as there are now. We're in a glut, but I think we're about to start getting, I almost feel like we could be hitting a new era of video games once they start licensing out again and we start getting game developers doing stuff. Because I think as much as when Disney took everything back in hand, they had their hands tied behind the back because the people working on the games were probably very talented and able to do, but they weren't able to get through all the red tape and the money side of things from Disney themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the obvious example of Force Awakens where we know the stories by now of how much they had to work through, but I'm sure that just about everything that they dealt with is in the same boat where, they wouldn't have access to Finding Dory. They don't know what the story is in advance. They don't know what the story of Doctor Strange is in advance. But the trick is the difference between a really good developer and a mediocre or even a bad developer is, assuming that they've got the ability to do so from Disney themselves, is rather than making it a tie-in to the movie where you're trying to recreate the movie, you do your own story off on the side. And then you don't have to worry about what happens in the movie.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and a lot of the big best games from Disney, Kingdom Hearts, Epic Mickey, they weren't connected to, to movies. And I think that's where they go for. I know Marvel have already got that idea that's not the best way of going forward. And like looking now, if Disney just go to these brand people and go, right, here's some characters, do what you want with them, make a good game. And I think that's where we're going to go. But the history of Disney games is it's a not quite. I don't think it's as bad as the Star Wars list we did. I think the Marvel one is definitely, when you look at the history of the 3 different brands, the Marvel one definitely seemed to stand out as having better games throughout. Because I think it leaned itself more to fighting styles, which is maybe more what I liked, so that's why it worked a bit better. Disney was all over the place, but definitely a list of great video games. But yeah, if you've got your favourite video game, let us know in the comments. Let us know which ones you enjoyed. Love to know your thoughts on all of that as well. Anything else you want to add to that list or talk about there, James, before we sign off on this episode?
No, although I do want to mention that I think we referenced the fact that we did a Star Wars episode of this as well. It's not actually airing until January, though.
No.
So
no. Unfortunately, we're hitting a zone of like the time of the year between both of us having vacations, Christmas, moving house, New Year. We've been recording double up episodes for
a while now.
For a while, so we're trying to get hopefully, yes, January you'll have that Star Wars episode up. But yeah, there's been a lot going on in like 6-week period of.
More X-Wing games.
Yes,
more X-Wing games.
I just want to see it. I want to see Super Disney Brawl now on the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I mean, take all of those packs that you got for Little Big Planet 3, and you have your project. Make a brawler game in Little Big Planet 3.
I can't build in Little Big Planet 3. I am going to be honest. I think Disney Infinity 2.0 has just killed my interest in building forever at this precise minute of playing. I just want to play. You are the people that make the game. You make it. I will just enjoy it. I don't need to create my own. I've done way too many hours in a toy box. I'm just having a break from my creative side.
You know what's funny? Not to tangent us too much here is. We had the PSX experience the week past for recording this. One of the things that was announced either around the time or at the thing was Lego Worlds coming to consoles, and I think expanding and all that stuff. And a lot of people from the Toy Box community who had said, I'm very wary of these games, I'm kind of glad to be done with, are all of a sudden be like, yes, Lego Worlds, I'm going to be building Lego Worlds. I'm like, oh, this is going to end in tears again at some point.
Yeah, but then the thing, if you're that kind of person or you enjoy that kind of content, Overwatch maybe isn't quite covering that kind of feeling for it. But yeah, no, I must admit there's a lot of different kind of games. I do hope that we do start seeing a little bit more variety from Disney. Let's have we have Kingdom Hearts. Let's get a building game. Let's get a Lego game. Let's get an adventure game. Let's get a 3D platform. Have some variety, and give us some choices. And now that maybe mix it up with having, whether or not they go down the same thing where they do with Marvel. Moana's out. Here's a Moana character coming to it, rather than just going make a Moana game. I think hopefully that's where we start. Because if you look at it like Disney Infinity, Disney Universe, Little Big Planet, they were all adding content to it, going down that route. But they were maybe a little bit too early for it, and I don't know if Disney might have the patience for it now. They might just be like, no, here's a slapper. You can have we can just sell the Pirates of the Caribbean license. Oh, no, have pick the Cars license. You've got the Toy Story, you've got Incredibles, and just dish it out like that, and they can make more money that way. And I think that's the best way for them to go forward.
Just ask Marvel how well that worked out for them with their movie franchise.
Yeah. But I do wonder, because Disney can't often go for kids, they're a lot more forgiving, and they're a little bit, like, if there's a mediocre Moana game out there, it's not going to make adults go, oh, it's just a Disney game, it's fine. It doesn't, they get a little pass on it. Like, if that had been like Crash Bandicoot instead, they'd be like, no, it's awful.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I was just reading here at the beginning of the thing about Mickey Mousecapade, the game I played as a kid. And I'm looking at the Wikipedia section for critical reception. And like, well, this game received a 2 out of 5 stars. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess people didn't really like it. But I've got very fond memories of it. Of course, I was 8 and had no taste in games. So
yeah, I do think there's that thing about they're because it's a different audience and a different core thing. But there again, I think we've got with this constant thing of a lot of the games are like, you know, there's a few gems in there, but there's a lot of just, like you say, mediocre in there.
Let's be generous and say mediocre.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to keep up with the latest from DisKingdom.com. There has been some issues with YouTube lately with unsubscribing people. So if you haven't maybe seen it for a while, or you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button and follow buttons on like Facebook and Twitter to make sure you're keeping up with us, just in case you get unsubscribed, which is a bit of an issue. Anyway, guys, be sure to hit us out over on, on the website. James, they can't really get you anywhere but MySpace at the minute. So.
Yes, and that's very carefully planned so that I can say terrible things about Final Fantasy VIII, and they're going to send you the hate mail, not me. Yeah. I'm sure that you'll forward it on to me, no problem.
Yes. I've got your address for the pigeon. But anyway, guys, thanks again for James for joining me on this one. We will be back next week with another episode of the Old Weekly Disney Video Game Podcast, and we shall see you guys soon. Later.